Greetings to all my dear friends. I hope you are healthy, fit and fine. Welcome to Drishti IAS. Now, welcome to this particular module of UPPCS Mains segment 2023. We are going to approach this segment. I will be dealing with the polity and governance portion in this particular, you can say, module. Now, before understanding the core theme and our strategy, let us first understand the syllabus of the PCS Mains Examination, my dear friends. It becomes imperative to plan out our strategy. It becomes equally important to chalk out our strategy, that how we are going to approach the examination, what has been the trend in the past few years, what are the core areas in which the PCS is primarily focusing upon, what should be our approach, and so on and so forth. My dear friends, we are here to discuss. In this particular lecture, we are going to discuss about the core theme of the syllabus and of course how are we going to approach this particular module. So let's get started. Now, my dear friends, as you already know that from past few years, and in fact what has been the trend in the PCS examination, primarily the Public Service Commission is focusing more upon not only the core syllabus of the theme, but it is also at the same time focusing upon the aspects which are very much in news. I'll show you, because last year also there has been question related to the current dimensions, like for example Mission Shakti was actually asked. Also there were presidential election that was actually happening, and there you have the question related to that. Now this year also we may anticipate, because of so many ups and downs, so many changes in the pattern, we are of the opinion that PCS examination will be primarily focusing upon you can say the current theme or the current aspect. You can say, of course, by going with the streamed guidelines of the syllabus, of course sticking to the pattern what we have. My dear friends, it also becomes imperative for us to understand, anticipate and plan out our strategy beforehand, of course keeping in mind the core syllabus. Now what you have in your syllabus is, if you read the first part, that is we are going to deal with the general studies portion of polity and governance. Now what you have is the core theme of Indian Constitution. Now we will be discussing this particular theme into variety of segments, into few segments like A, B and C and D, in which primarily we will be focusing upon what has led to the development of Constitution. Why do we need Indian Constitution? What are the criticism, limitations, all those aspects we are going to deal here. We are also going to deal with the current aspect of, you can say, the challenges that has led to the development of Indian Constitution, right? What is the primary difference between the Indian Constitution and the British style of administration, right? We will be focusing upon those areas. Then of course the syllabus is primarily focusing upon the significant provision and basic structure. Now if you can see the values of basic structure, now post 𝐾𝐸𝐴𝐵 Bharati versus state of Kerala, what has led to the development of 𝐾𝐸𝐴𝐵 Bharati, what is the doctrine of basic structure, why the Supreme Court have given this particular doctrine. Now we are already celebrating 50 years of this particular judgment. Last year also there was a question, before that there was a question related to basic structure. We may anticipate this year also there can be a question related to the doctrine of basic structure. The theme of the constitutional values, the role of Supreme Court in evolution. Now Supreme Court is very much in news for a variety of reasons. One is of course the ambit of Article 21 of the Indian Constitution. The other is, you already know, related to the anti-defection law. You already know most of the judgments we have seen related to Article 142, right? Now it becomes imperative, and the PCS examination can actually focus upon this particular area also, right? From past few years we have seen that there are of course maximum number, one of the, you can say, highest number of questions asked from this segment. So we will try and understand, classify the powers of the Supreme Court, in fact, the judiciary, what is judicial evasion, judicial review, judicial overreach, all those aspects we are going to discuss in extreme detail. Then it is also focusing upon function and responsibility of the union and states, issues, challenges to the federal structure, devolution of powers, finances up to local levels and challenges therein, and role of finance commission in center-state relation. Now, it is primarily focusing upon the federal aspect. And when I'm saying it is primarily focusing upon the federal aspect, it is talking about, you can say, the devolution of power, legislative relation, executive relation. It is also talking about the financial relation, how or what kind of federal structure, how the federal structure has evolved, what is cooperative federalism, what are the themes or what are the areas in which federalism is getting weak, the Punchi Commission report, the Sarkaria Commission report, ARC, Administrative Reform Commission report, all those areas we have to discuss this particular segment in extreme detail, right? So this becomes imperative because this also is one of the important, we are going to discuss about the different models of federalism in this particular chapter. Then of course, one of the very important theme, that is separation of power. Now this is something that is very much fundamental. We are also going to discuss about what are the key areas or the key themes of separation of power. Can we say that the India or the Indian structure or the Indian administrative structure in particular is having the same degree of separation of power as what we have in America, or a lesser degree of separation of power is available? Do we have a parliamentary democracy in India, or how parliamentary democracy has affected separation of power, right? We are going to discuss about, can we say that the separation of power in India is a diluted separation of power? What has led to the separation of power? Whether there is a provision mentioned in the constitution about separation of power? All those are aspects we are going to discuss in this particular segment, my dear friends. Also, at the same time, we have to discuss about dispute redressal mechanism, adjudication mechanism, all the dispute, you can say alternative dispute resolution mechanism, how we are going to discuss what is Singapore Convention, reconciliation, negotiation, like you can say the concept of Lok Adalat, everything we are going to discuss in this particular portion. Now, this is something, you can say, one of the strongest areas where any aspirant or likely to score more marks, right? Because this is one of the static portion, nothing more to, or nothing is, you can say, or any of the portion is not very dynamic, or any segment under this particular ambit is not dynamic. It's a very static portion. We may anticipate that the questions raised would be under this particular segment would be a direct questions, right? For example, whether the Lok Adalat, what the concept of Lok Adalat, separation of power is overlapping or not, and so on and so forth, right? The basic structure of the constitution, what has led to the basic structure of the constitution. Primarily, the PCS examination is focusing in this area, and the questions asked under this area, you can say, are very easy. Okay, so it is important again. Then there is something very important that is called comparison of the Indian constitutional scheme with that of the major democratic countries, right? Now, we are going to discuss this particular comparison of Indian constitutional scheme with that of the other major democratic countries. How we are going to discuss this? Let's say, for example, British style of administration. How is it different from republican values or republican democracy, right? How civil services are different from, you can say, the British civil servants. How judiciary is different in both the countries. Let us compare also how American judiciary is different from Indian judiciary. Under various verticals, we are going to discuss about the comparison of the modern democratic countries. What kind of constitution is there in you can say in America. Now, post Philadelphia Convention, what degree of separation of power is available, how the powers are divided, what is the role of Congress, how Indian Parliament is different from you can say the British Parliament. All those things we are going to discuss. And in fact, the major democratic countries, in fact, like Switzerland, all those countries we are going to discuss. What kind of democracy is there, whether it is a direct democracy, whether it is an indirect democracy, right? All those aspects we are going to discuss under this particular vertical. Now, this is going to be one of the comprehensive discussion because you'll get to know many things about the major democratic countries, and when it is compared with the Indian, how judiciary is different, how legislative organ is different, how executives are different, how prime minister is different, what is the role of presidential democracy under variety of verticals, how federalism is actually different. All those aspects we are going to discuss in this particular segment, my dear friends. Then we are also going to discuss about parliament and state legislature. And this is also one of the static portion where the UPPCS examination is primarily focusing upon. This area is one of the most important area, yet also very easy, but it is actually focusing upon the issues pertaining to the parliamentary democracy. Now, this also becomes important because one of the legislatures have been disqualified. It may also come with the provision of RP Act, Representations of People Act. What are the provisions led to the disqualification of one of the prominent political figure in India? How can you disqualify a member of parliament? What are the issues pertaining to that? All those aspects becomes very, very important for your examination, and PCS is likely to focus upon this particular core theme under this particular segment, my dear friends. Then it is also talking about the executive, it is also talking about judiciary, public interest litigation, how it has become publicity interest litigation. कैसे भाई public interest litigation आज की डेट में publicity interest litigation बनती है. Of course, we are going to discuss it with the Supreme Court. We are going to discuss the basic concept of public interest litigation. What were the famous cases of public interest litigation? And if you have seen the report of National Judicial Data Grid as per 2023 report, it becomes imperative for us to understand that almost 4.5 crore cases are pending in India. So alternative dispute resolution plus the role of Supreme Court in terms of adjudication, the pendency of the cases, Malimath committee report, all those things will be discussed under one comprehensive umbrella, my dear friends, right? So we have to deal with all those aspects under this. What are pressure groups? What are formal, informal association? How it is different from political parties, right? These are the areas which we will be focusing more upon. Also, if you see the next theme, you'll come to know the next theme is primarily focusing upon some of the static portion. That constitutional post, what is constitutional body, how it is different from statutory, regulatory, quasi-judicial body, right? What are the criticism related to that? Now, election, there was a judgment of the Supreme Court related to the Election Commission of India. We have to deal with that particular judgment in extreme detail because you may expect a question directly related to the Election Commission of India, my dear friends. Okay, so it becomes imperative for us to understand it very carefully. Then, of course, government policies, intervention for development in various sectors, issues arising out of their design, information communication technology. Yes, that means it is a part of your policy framework, policy making. How are we going to change the life of maybe the extreme vulnerable section of the society? How are we going to approach? How are we going to help them in terms of availing the maximum benefit of the government? All those with the help of information technology models, we are going to deal with it, right? That will also be clubbed with the e-governance portion, my dear friend. We are going to deal with extreme detail. What are the different types of models of e-governance? What are the different schemes? Last year, there was a question related to Mission Shakti. This year, you may also anticipate questions related to most of the very, very important schemes which are run under the ambit of Uttar Pradesh government. So that becomes one of the important part. Then the development process, the NGO, the self-help groups itself becomes very, very important because now how SHGs have helped to transform, or how SHG has been able to uplift the status of the women, how it has led to the women empowerment in particular, we will be dealing with it, right? What are the negatives? What are the pros? how we can ensure better development in these areas, right? So various groups, donors, charities, and institutional and other stakeholders we are going to comprehensively deal with. Okay, so this is something I am of the opinion that more of a theme-based analysis with the way forward, that how are we going to approach, what should be the solution, why this particular model in the rural areas are suffering, right? We will be discussing in extreme detail under this particular segment. Then of course the aspects of transparency, accountability, e-governance, model, success, limitations, citizen charter, institutional measures. Can we say that the citizen charter, or what are the negatives of citizen charter? Do we have citizen charters in India? What is the Administrative Reform Commission report saying about citizen charter? All those aspects we have to deal with. Some extreme caution, my dear friends. Then role of civil services, various thinkers, right? For example, Kaiden views on civil services. What are the emerging trends? What are the traits of a good civil servant, right? What should be done, or what are the characteristics of the civil servants, right? So these are the what is Hota committee report, what are the areas in which the Administrative Reform Commission is expected, or the Administrative Reform Commission is focusing more upon, right? So all those areas we are going to discuss about the civil servant. What is generalist specialist approach, right? So this particular segment will be primarily focusing upon these core areas under this mains and polity governance portion, right? So let us also understand few of the question, like last year how the question was actually framed. Let us divide the areas. Last year the question was basically on non-governmental organization in the policy making front. Again, what are the roles of NGOs? Now, in fact, this year also you may anticipate a question directly related to the policy making, role of pressure group, or you can say the role of self-help groups, right? Or how can we ensure that the citizens' participation is very much there, civil society in broader perspective, how civil society is playing instrumental role in, you can say, policy making. All those aspects we are going to discuss in this particular segment. Then of course last year there was a question related to Article 21 of the Indian Constitution. Why? Because entire last year, post Manohar Lal Sharma's judgment, the ambit of Article 21 was very, very important, right? We anticipated a question can actually come under the ambit of Article 21. This year also the matter is under adjudication related to the same-sex marriage. This year also Article 21 can be asked, because that also becomes one of the most important area where the examinee or where the PCS examination can actually focus upon. Consider the function of Chief Minister and Governor. That's a very static portion. Critically examine the role of Finance Commission in center-state relation. That's again a static portion. Then alternative dispute resolution mechanism, how Lok Adalat have acted as a great catalyst for change in the Indian legal system, right? What is Negotiable Instrument Act 1987, how it is different primarily. Okay, this is something we will be discussing under ADR. We will also be discussing about the recent report, pendency of cases at a district level, then the high court level, some of the very core important areas, some of the very important reports, for example, National Judicial Data Grid report. All those things we are going to discuss under this ambit. Then last year discuss the challenges SHG. मैंने बताया आपको अभी मिशन शक्ति के बारे में. The question was asked because that was one of the areas which has already been asked. Explain the objective and composition of Niti Aayog. In fact, post 2014, how has the Niti Aayog, or post abolishment of Planning Commission, how Niti Aayog has been very much instrumentally playing important role in terms of, you can say, center-state relationship, right? What is primarily, or how significant is the role of Niti Aayog in terms of planning and all those things, right? So committees, because last year also we anticipated a question can actually come, because last year we were celebrating 100 years of our Public Account Committee and Estimate Committee. This year you can say anticipate a question related to the parliamentary reforms, right? So this is something, a core area in which primarily the UPSC was focusing upon. Again, the presidential election, इतना कुछ है presidential election के बारे में. So direct question. Before that there was a question related to the impeachment of the president, my dear friend. Now here it is actually a very static portion, but why it was asked, you have seen the presidential election. Draupadi Murmu ji was actually elected as the president. So there comes a question related to that. The concept of one nation, one election, the negatives, the pros, it is also part of our electoral reform that we will be discussing, my dear friends. Then discuss the evolution impact of basic structure. This year also it becomes important for the basic structure. Write a critical note on problems, reforms of administrative system of Uttar Pradesh. That will also be discussed under a very core, under the core theme of, you can say, the Indian polity and governance segment, my dear friends. Now, if you see the pattern of the PCS examination, you can never, or we can never understand that we can never get a very clear understanding that that the PCS examination is primarily focusing upon only the segmented or the past year, or you can say the areas in which PCS have been framing question. No, it is also focusing upon the current themes. It is also focusing upon the current dimensions, my dear friends. It is imperative, it is important for us to understand that while you are even moving in that direction, you have to keep one thing in mind, that there is no one way of writing an answer. There can never be one good way of answer writing. For answer writing, you have to start, my dear friends, right? And once you are going to start in this particular segment and in this particular module, we are going to deal with extensively, especially focusing upon that how you are going to write a answer, right? So we'll be meeting you in the segment. Thank you so much. God bless you. All the best.